The rain poured relentlessly over Ravensbrook, transforming the twisting road that cut through the Ironwood Hills into a shimmering, treacherous sheet of water. The steady sweep of the windshield wipers created a hypnotic rhythm, almost lulling in its repetition. But Ethan Cole, hidden behind the disguise of a chauffeur's uniform, had no room for distraction. His entire body was coiled with tension, every muscle focused on keeping control of the car against the fury of the storm, while the weight of his true mission pressed down on his chest like an unseen anchor. In the back seat sat Gregory and Eleanor Blackwell, their voices pitched low, though still clear enough for Ethan to catch every poisonous word. They embodied arrogance itself, perched stiffly with the air of people who believed themselves above everyone around them, even when trapped in the same vehicle, hurtling through a storm. "It's simply outrageous," Gregory muttered in irritation, tugging at the silk scarf draped about his neck. "Our daughter wastes her time on this charity nonsense as if that's a pursuit befitting a woman of her stature. It's practically disgraceful." "Practically?" Eleanor cut in sharply, her perfectly shaped eyebrow arched in disdain. A crystal glass of red wine trembled slightly in her hand as the car jolted. "No, it's entirely shameful. She has every chance to restore our family's reputation, and instead she chooses to mix with them." She spat out the final word as though it dirtied her tongue. Ethan clenched his jaw, but kept his gaze pinned to the slick road. He forced himself to endure it, because listening, truly listening, was the only way to prove what he had suspected all along. "Did you notice her excitement over that event last week?" Eleanor continued with a cold laugh. "Now she talks of opening some community school, as if she has the faintest clue how to run anything of that sort. If she marries the right man, these foolish little projects will vanish." Gregory gave a curt nod, staring out the window at the rain-drenched countryside. "Exactly. Which is why this wedding must happen. A man like Ethan Cole doesn't appear twice in a woman's life. Costly, yes, but he is our path back to relevance." A surge of heat rushed through Ethan's veins. He had heard whispers of the Blackwells' financial ruin, and that rumor was what had driven him undercover. But to hear them so openly plot, treating Clara as nothing more than a pawn, ignited a wave of indignation inside him. Clara was strong, compassionate, fiercely independent, the last person who deserved to be reduced to a bargaining chip. A jagged flash of lightning illuminated the sharp curve ahead, framed by looming trees that swayed menacingly in the gale. Ethan steadied the wheel with precise control, guiding the car safely around the bend as the storm roared louder. "You'd better drive with more care," Eleanor snapped, her frosty gaze catching him in the rearview mirror. "We don't intend to arrive at our own party soaked, or worse, dead." "Yes, ma'am," Ethan answered smoothly, his tone careful, neutral. Every word he spoke had to be measured, for he couldn't allow his contempt for them to slip through. At least his act was convincing. They believed in the guys completely. "I trust the heating is finally fixed in the house?" Gregory demanded, brushing Ethan aside as though he weren't there at all. He turned to his wife. "This party must be flawless. If we fail to prove our influence still matters, what little respect remains will vanish." "Relax," Eleanor replied, sipping her wine with practiced grace. "Once this marriage is sealed, all of our troubles will evaporate." Ethan's anger flared again. To them, marriage was nothing but a calculated trade, a scheme to claw back their standing. They never once considered Clara's heart, or the chance she might truly love him, not the man they thought he was pretending to be. The storm outside gave a violent reminder of its power. Wind howled, Branches cracked and scraped across the road. Ethan spotted a dark shape ahead and slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched, the car skidding before finding its grip again. The Blackwells lurched, clutching at their seats. "What on earth was that?" Gregory barked, his face pale with fury. "Are you trying to kill us, you fool?" "My apologies, sir," Ethan replied evenly, swallowing his irritation. "A branch had fallen across the road. I managed to avoid it. Next time, do better." Eleanor huffed, her voice sharp as glass. "We expect precision, not chaos." Ethan inhaled deeply, fixing his eyes once more on the storm-drenched road. Every moment in that car was a trial of endurance, but he couldn't falter now. The truth was almost within his reach, and he refused to turn back. At last, the silhouette of the Blackwell estate rose in the distance, towering and austere against the lightning-ripped sky. Golden lights spilled from its windows, but to Ethan, it looked less like a home and more like a fortress of deceit. He knew the night's real revelations had only just begun. Pulling the car smoothly to the entrance, he caught a final glimpse of the Blackwells in the rearview mirror, fussing over their clothes, perfecting their image for the arriving guests. They hadn't the slightest idea that their driver was the very man they planned to entrap. Ethan cut the engine and stepped out, swiftly opening their doors and shielding them with umbrellas. As they disappeared into the mansion, he tilted his face briefly to the sky, letting the cold rain ground him. He needed that one moment of clarity, because the real game was only beginning. 6 months earlier, Ethan Cole could never have imagined himself behind the wheel of a luxury car, disguised as a chauffeur, all to expose the truth about the family of the woman he loved. His life had looked entirely different then, propelled by ambition, relentless effort, and a reputation carved from sheer willpower. Ethan had grown up in Harborview, a modest town outside Boston, where every dollar was stretched and every meal earned through hard work. His mother endured long shifts at the hospital as a nurse, while his father labored as a mechanic, fixing cars in their cramped garage. From them, Ethan learned early that life was harsh, but also that grit and determination could conquer nearly anything. As a boy, he inherited his father's fascination with engines, spending hours tinkering with worn-out parts, taking them apart and piecing them back together. That curiosity evolved into a full-blown passion for invention. While other teens partied their nights away, Ethan buried himself in sketches, prototypes, and engineering books. By 20, he had already launched his first startup, dedicated to building sustainable automotive technology. At 34, Ethan Cole was already a billionaire, his name splashed across the covers of business magazines and praised as a visionary. Yet despite his fortune, he carried himself with humility. He refused to be the kind of man wealth could corrupt. Ethan still preferred to drive his own cars and made it a point to treat every employee as an equal, no matter their position. It was at one of the few social gatherings he ever forced himself to attend, a charity gala in New York City, that Ethan first encountered Clara Blackwell. He hadn't wanted to go, but an old friend persuaded him that such circles of influence couldn't be ignored forever. Ethan had always loathed these events, rooms filled with artificial smiles, hollow laughter, and conversations about inflated fortunes. But Clara stood apart. She lingered quietly near the edge of the ballroom, gazing intently at a painting, while the rest of the guests paraded with champagne glasses and rehearsed charm. She wore a simple navy dress, unadorned and elegant, utterly unlike the ostentation Ethan had come to expect from the elite. When he finally approached her, her voice disarmed him with its sincerity. It's striking, isn't it? She asked softly, nodding at the abstract canvas before her. People mistake art for aesthetics, but I think it's really about feeling, about the way it stirs you inside. Ethan, a man long accustomed to discussions of profits and mergers, found himself intrigued. I couldn't agree more, he replied, though I suppose most here are interested only in the price tags. Clara laughed, the sound bright and unstudied, a melody that seemed out of place in such a setting. Exactly. That's why I stay at the edges. I've never been good at gala conversations. Neither have I, Ethan admitted, offering his hand. Ethan. Clara. And with that, something rare began. Their conversation flowed naturally without effort, unlike the strained exchanges that defined Ethan's world. Clara was brilliant, compassionate, and blissfully unaware of who he really was. While others angled to impress him with their connections or flaunted their wealth, she spoke about her dream of opening a community school to help underprivileged children. To her, he was simply a kind man who listened, not the titan of industry that the headlines proclaimed. Over the following months, they saw each other often. Ethan, captivated by her authenticity, kept his fortune hidden. He needed to know she loved him for himself, not for his wealth. Clara, in turn, grew steadily closer, speaking of futures that seemed more and more entwined. But always, her parents loomed. Whispers began to reach Ethan. Friends with knowledge of the Blackwells hinted at serious financial ruin. Gregory's reckless investments had collapsed, while Eleanor's appetite for extravagance had buried them under enormous debts. Their mansion was little more than an empty shell, a monument to a fortune long since squandered. According to the rumors, they were desperate, and Clara was their only hope, a daughter they intended to marry off to a man wealthy enough to rescue them. At first, Ethan resisted the thought. Clara was nothing like them. Surely she couldn't have grown up in such toxicity. But as the rumors persisted, a seed of doubt grew. He had to know the truth. That's when the plan formed. Through a family acquaintance, Ethan arranged to work as their private chauffeur. Behind the wheel, hidden in plain sight, he would see how they treated a man they believed beneath them. More than that, he wanted to shield Clara from manipulation, to confirm with his own eyes the lengths her parents might go. The risk was monumental. If discovered, Clara could see his deception as a betrayal, unforgivable and invasive. But Ethan decided the truth outweighed the danger. The night he first donned the driver's uniform, fastening the cap firmly, he felt an odd blend of nerves and resolve. Every glance, every word from the Blackwells would be a clue to their true selves. His first meeting with them erased any lingering doubt. He arrived at the Blackwell estate in a polished black sedan, crisp in the uniform he'd had tailored for the part. Gregory looked him up and down with clinical detachment. "You must be the new driver," he said flatly. "Be punctual. Be discreet. Don't ask questions. Understood?" "Yes, sir," Ethan replied, deliberately lowering his gaze, though a lump pressed hard in his throat. Gregory's tone dragged him back to years when he had truly been a delivery driver, working endless shifts and scraping together every dollar. He loathed the condescension, but he knew he needed the Blackwells to believe he was no one of importance. Moments later, Eleanor descended the steps, as though she were performing for an audience. Draped in a scarlet dress, far too glamorous for the outing ahead, she regarded him with thinly veiled contempt. "I trust you understand we hold our staff to the highest standards," she declared. "Should you prove incompetent, you'll be replaced immediately. Drivers, after all, are disposable." Ethan gave no reaction, only a silent nod. Inside, however, his anger simmered. Her words carried the cold cruelty of someone who believed wealth alone defined worth. That she was Clara's mother made it sting all the more. Their first drive together was to a luncheon with their high society friends. The Blackwells chatted freely in the back seat, ignoring Ethan as though he were invisible. It suited his plan, though each dismissive remark tested his composure. "This can't go on," Gregory grumbled, running his hand through thinning hair. "Creditors are already calling the house. The humiliation is unbearable." "We must be clever," Eleanor replied, her voice calculated. "Clara is already enchanted by Ethan. All we need is a proposal, and our problems are solved. He can more than support us." Ethan's chest tightened, his blood running cold. There it was, the confirmation he dreaded. Clara wasn't simply the daughter of overbearing parents. She was a pawn in their scheme for survival. And yet, she seemed oblivious. In all their talks, she had never hinted at any awareness of her family's desperate situation. She was smart, yes, but Gregory and Eleanor were masters of deception. Clara's open heart and generosity left her blind to how far they would go to use her. After dropping them at the restaurant, Ethan Cole pulled the car to a quiet corner and let the engine idle. Every passing minute in disguise felt like an ordeal, a fire he had to walk through without flinching. He reminded himself he had to keep pressing on, though with each bitter truth he uncovered, the weight of disappointment grew heavier on his chest. Later that afternoon, while waiting at the Blackwell estate to drive Gregory and Eleanor into the city, Ethan witnessed another scene that chilled him. From the garden, he spotted Eleanor, glass of wine in hand, berating a maid who had dropped a tray. "I told you to be more careful," she snapped, her expression twisted with disdain. "Do you think we toil to hire people as useless as you?" The maid bowed her head in apology, shame flickering in her eyes. Ethan recognized that look instantly. He had worn it himself once, back when his worth was measured by what little he could provide. He ached to step in, to defend the woman, but the disguise held him back. When the Blackwells finally appeared for their next outing, Eleanor carried her frustration straight into the car. "I trust you drive better than that maid can carry a tray," she scoffed, climbing into the back seat without a glance at him. Ethan gave his usual silent nod, though inside he was brimming with the urge to answer back. More and more it became clear. These people knew no limits to their arrogance. Power, image, and control were their only currencies, and if crushing their own daughter furthered their cause, so be it. That evening, after parking once more at the mansion, Ethan remained in the car a while, staring into the storm-darkened night. His thoughts returned to Clara, luminous, kind, utterly unlike her parents. How had she grown up in this poisonous environment and remained so good? Perhaps that was why they saw her as the perfect tool. Her very difference from them made her bait, a lure strong enough to catch someone like him. Ethan clenched the wheel, his jaw tight. He had to continue. He needed more proof before revealing anything to Clara. But one thing was now certain. Gregory and Eleanor weren't simply manipulative. They were a danger to her, and he would not allow the woman he loved to be devoured by their schemes. The black sedan seemed to trap the tension in its air. Every sharp remark, every veiled complaint the Blackwells made cut deeper. Remaining silent, Ethan carried the role of chauffeur like a mask he could not remove. That night, he drove them to a gala dinner. A storm was gathering overhead, thunder rumbling across the hills. Gregory, as usual, began with complaints. "These roads are a disgrace," he muttered, arms folded, glaring into the rearview mirror as though Ethan himself were responsible. We pay staggering taxes and still drive through potholes. Eleanor rolled her eyes and answered with a sarcastic bite. Honestly, Gregory, do you think drivers even vote? Don't expect them to know how the system works. Ethan kept his face unreadable, swallowing the retort that burned on his tongue. It was part of the game, one he had to see through to the end. Still, their casual contempt for others gnawed at him. In the back seat, Gregory shifted the conversation. He withdrew an envelope from his jacket. Unfolding property documents, Ethan glimpsed through the mirror. "This is all that's left," Gregory muttered, bitterness heavy in his tone. "If this marriage falls through, we'll lose even the cottage. It's unbearable." Eleanor, by contrast, sounded cold and resolved. "Then we'll do whatever is required. Clara is nearly there. Can't you hear the way she speaks of Ethan? It's only a matter of time before he proposes." "And if he doesn't?" Gregory pressed, his face darkening. "What if he uncovers the truth before that?" "He won't," Eleanor snapped. "Clara doesn't know we're ruined, and she certainly won't tell him something she doesn't know herself. As long as he believes we're respectable, he'll feel compelled to protect her, which means protecting us too." Ethan's stomach tightened. Their earlier words had been vile, but this was worse. Clara wasn't just being manipulated, she was being used as bait. They had woven a trap where her love and goodness became the snare. Later that evening, while waiting in the car outside the gala, Ethan overheard another conversation that confirmed everything. He had parked close to the entrance, windows cracked just enough to catch voices. "So, you really think this wedding will happen?" a guest asked Gregory with mocking disbelief. "I'm certain," Gregory replied coolly. "Ethan may be intelligent, but he's also a man of principle, and men like that are easy to control. They always think they can save the world or the people they love. Clara will be our bridge to safety. He'll never stop protecting her, and by extension, us." The guest chuckled darkly. "Risky plan, but considering your situation, you've little left to lose." Ethan's grip on the steering wheel turned his knuckles white. The cynicism was bad enough, but to hear another man echo and validate it made his stomach churn. He felt like a pawn in a grotesque game, one he hadn't even realized he'd been dragged into, but he forced himself still. Reacting now would ruin everything. That night, on the drive back to the mansion, Ethan's mind spiraled with doubts. He loved Clara. That was unquestionable. But what would she do if she learned the truth? If she discovered that her parents saw her as nothing more than a bargaining chip, and that he, the man she trusted, had gone undercover in secret? The silence in the car was suffocating. Gregory scrolled through his phone, frowning at every message. Eleanor reclined against the seat, weary from an evening of empty compliments. They were oblivious to Ethan's turmoil, blind to the storm raging only a few feet away. The storm inside him. "These investors are becoming impossible," Gregory Blackwell muttered, his frustration heavy in the back seat. "If only Ethan would be more public about his plans, we could turn that to our advantage." Eleanor sighed, swirling the wine in her glass. "Patience, love. He's only just begun with Clara. In time, everything will fall into place. We'll get what we need." Back at the mansion, Ethan opened the car door for Eleanor, while Gregory grumbled about needing a stiff drink before bed. Only when the door shut and the estate's grand lights dimmed did Ethan allow himself a long breath. Each passing day, the charade grew heavier, each revelation more bitter than the last. He knew the inevitable confrontation was coming. The only question was when. and how. As the last windows of the mansion went dark, Ethan made a silent vow. No matter the cost, he would protect Clara. He would fight the Blackwells with the only weapon they could never wield: integrity. The next morning, the Blackwell estate seemed cloaked in an unnatural stillness. Sunlight spilled across its towering windows, yet the halls hummed with tension. Ethan arrived earlier than usual, heart steeled with a new plan. He needed evidence, undeniable proof of their corruption. Words overheard in cars were not enough. He needed something concrete, something Clara could not dismiss. Opportunity came swiftly. Gregory left his study to take a call in the garden, leaving the door ajar. Ethan's pulse hammered as he slipped inside. He rifled through the desk, finding unfinished contracts, debt ledgers, and most damning, letters from creditors threatening to seize the mansion within weeks. But then, one folder froze him in place. Clara's name scrawled across the front. Inside were unsent letters addressed to him. In them, Gregory crafted a performance of desperation, begging for financial salvation. "You love my daughter," one read. "All I want as her father is to ensure she has the life she deserves. But for that, we need your help." Ethan's stomach twisted. Manipulation was one thing, but these staged pleas proved just how far Gregory was willing to debase himself, using Clara as bait, disguising greed as paternal concern. Later that day, Ethan drove the Blackwells to a luncheon with investors. Eleanor, draped in a jeweled necklace that almost certainly rested on credit, bragged about the family's future. "With the new investments, we'll restore the country house," she said brightly, her eyes darting toward Gregory. He forced a smile, but Ethan caught the truth behind it. Dread, not confidence. They were teetering on the edge of ruin. "Joe," Eleanor snapped suddenly, using the false name Ethan had given them. "Be sure you're punctual when you collect us tonight. We need to be flawless for the gala. Clara must never feel ashamed." Ethan's anger swelled, but he forced it down, replying only, "Yes, ma'am." Each word carried him closer to the breaking point. And it was on the drive back that the storm finally broke. Rain lashed the car as thunder rolled overhead. The Blackwells whispered in urgent tones, their anxiety bleeding through. "We must push Ethan to propose soon," Gregory said sharply. "Clara is already caught up, but if he learns of our debts before then, we're finished." "Yes," Eleanor agreed, "but we mustn't appear desperate." That was it. Ethan's patience snapped. Meeting Gregory's gaze through the rearview mirror, his voice came out calm, but edged with steel. "Interesting words, Mr. Blackwell." The car fell into a stunned silence. Eleanor and Gregory exchanged panicked looks. "What do you mean?" Gregory asked, his tone brittle. Ethan pulled into the driveway, killed the engine, and turned to face them. Slowly, deliberately, he removed the cap of his disguise. "I mean," he said, his voice sharp as a blade, "that perhaps you ought to know who has really been driving you all along." Eleanor paled. Gregory froze. "I'm Ethan Cole," he continued. "And yes, I went undercover, because unlike you, I don't make choices blind. And now I know exactly who you are." The tension detonated. Eleanor stammered, We were only trying to protect our family." "Protect?" Ethan's voice thundered for the first time. "You've been using your daughter, treating her as a bargaining chip. That isn't protection. That's betrayal." Gregory tried to argue, but Ethan cut him off with a raised hand. "Enough. You preyed on Clara's kindness and her trust. Worst of all, she has no idea." The rain battered the roof like a drumbeat. Eleanor's composure crumbled, tears streaking down her cheeks. "Please, Don't tell her. She wouldn't understand. She'd never forgive us. Ethan's face hardened. She deserves the truth, and she'll hear it, but not from you. With that, he stepped out of the car, leaving them in the storm of their own making. Inside the estate, another storm was waiting. Ethan strode through the marble hall, soaked but resolute. Clara sat by the fire, book in hand, her smile fading as she caught the gravity in his eyes. "Ethan, what happened?" Before he could answer, Gregory and Eleanor stumbled in behind him, pale and shaken. Eleanor tried to compose herself, but her false smile faltered. "Darling, we need to speak with you." "No," Ethan cut in, his voice firm. "You won't tell her. I will." Clara's confusion deepened. "What's going on?" Drawing a breath, Ethan steadied himself. "Clara, there's something you must know. About your parents, and about me." Her brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I'm not just Ethan Cole, the man you've been seeing. For weeks, I've been undercover as your family's chauffeur. I had to see the truth with my own eyes." Her gasp was sharp. "You what? You disguised yourself?" Gregory pounced. "He did it because he doesn't trust us. He wants to paint us as villains." "Villains?" Ethan roared. "You lied to her. You used her as bait to save yourselves. That's not protection. That's selfishness." "Enough!" Clara's voice cracked, trembling. "Someone please explain." Ethan looked into her eyes, feeling the weight of everything crash down. "Clara, your parents are drowning in debt. They were counting on me, on us, to rescue them. You were their bridge, their pawn." The silence that followed was brutal. Clara's gaze darted to her parents, who could not meet her eyes. Eleanor sobbed. Gregory stared at the floor. "Is it true?" she whispered. Neither answered, and that silence was louder than any confession. Clara's voice broke. "You lied to me. You used me." Ethan stepped forward, desperate. "I know this hurts. I know I deceived you too, but I did it to protect you, because I love you." Tears streamed down Clara's face. "Protect me? You lied to me, Ethan, just like they did." Her words cut deeper than any blade. Gregory pleaded, "We were desperate. We had no choice." "You always have a choice," Clara snapped, her grief turning into anger. "And you chose to use me." Eleanor collapsed at Clara's feet, clutching her dress. "We're your family. Don't abandon us." Clara pulled away, her voice like steel. "Family doesn't manipulate. Family doesn't lie. What you've done, that isn't family." Ethan's throat tightened. "Clara, I know I broke your trust, but I love you. I'll never lie again. Please, don't walk away." She looked at him, eyes shimmering with betrayal and love all at once. "I need time. I don't know who to trust anymore." And with that, she turned and left them all in silence. Days later, Clara found herself in her room, staring at the garden where she had once played as a child. Memories now felt poisoned, but she knew one truth. Ethan deserved to be heard. When she finally arrived at his home, he rose to greet her, heart pounding. "Clara." "Hi, Ethan," she said softly. "Can we talk?" Inside, in the quiet of his living room, Ethan poured out his apology. "I lied, and I'll never forgive myself. But everything I did was for you, even if it means losing you." Clara's tears glistened, but her voice was steady. "You hurt me. You infiltrated my life. But you also showed me courage no one else had. You opened my eyes, and you did it because you care." Ethan's breath caught. "You think we can move past this?" She smiled faintly. "If we build everything on honesty, yes, we can survive anything." Months passed. The Blackwells sold off luxuries and began, for the first time, to live simply. Clara kept her distance, but demanded boundaries. Boundaries her parents finally respected. Ethan, despite everything, helped them settle their debts under one condition: absolute transparency. Gregory, pride swallowed, agreed. A year later, Ethan brought Clara to Harborview, the modest town of his youth. At sunset, in a quiet park, he held her hands. "This year proved we can overcome anything. You're the most incredible woman I've ever known. Clara Blackwell, will you marry me?" Her laughter spilled into tears as she nodded again and again. "Yes, Ethan. Yes, 1,000 times." He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her as children's voices and wind in the trees became the perfect music. Later, surrounded by close friends and a chastened family, they wed in a small ceremony. Under the stars, their first dance was not of flawless heroes, but of two people scarred, tested, and stronger for it. Together, they began a new chapter, one not built on illusions, but on love, truth, and resilience.